At 71, Alfred Molina no longer seeks to impress or explain. He speaks with restraint, like a man who has learned that some truths gain nothing by being shouted. His voice is calm, almost measured, yet every word carries the weight of years spent in silence beneath the lights. The public knows him as a solid, respected actor, capable of inhabiting complex roles without ever forcing emotion. Yet behind that controlled mastery lies another story. A story shaped not by success, but by fractures. Precise moments when trust collapsed quietly, without witnesses. These were not spectacular betrayals. On the contrary, they were often small gestures, a forgotten promise, support withdrawn too early, a gaze that turns away when one still expects a hand to reach out. Almost invisible moments that nevertheless change forever the way one looks at others. Over time, Alfred Molina understood that admiration is not loyalty, and recognition offers no protection. Some encounters illuminate a life, others leave a darker trace. Today, he finally accepts to name them. 5 betrayals, 5 silent scars, 5 faces he has never truly been able to forget. Before the roles, before the applause, there was a child attentive to every shift in tone. Alfred Molina was born in London into a modest family shaped by 2 cultures. His father, a Spanish immigrant, worked relentlessly without complaint. His mother, Italian, carried a worried tenderness, expressed more through gestures than words. In that world, fears were rarely spoken. They were kept inside. Very early on, Alfred learned to observe, to listen behind doors, to sense an adult's mood from the sound of their footsteps. His childhood was not unhappy, but it was marked by restraint. Love existed, yet it was rarely demonstrative, so the child learned to manage his emotions alone. At school, he discovered theater almost by accident. On stage, he could finally express what daily life asked him to suppress. Still, even there, mistrust began to form. He learned that attention could vanish as quickly as it appeared. That applause one day could turn into indifference the next. These early experiences planted an invisible seed. Alfred Molina grew up with a quiet conviction. Never give everything, never expect too much. Trust became cautious, attachment measured. Without realizing it, he was already building the inner distance that would later protect him and isolate him. The rise was neither sudden nor dazzling. It was patient. Alfred Molina advanced step by step, accepting roles others declined, working in the shadows, learning to disappear in order to serve his characters. Theater first, then television, then cinema. Each performance became an exercise in precision. Each set a lesson in humility. Years passed and his face grew familiar. Not the face of a loud star, but of an actor one could rely on. He was called when depth was needed, when gravity mattered, when presence had to hold without stealing the light. He quickly understood that his strength was not being adored, but being indispensable. That realization reassured him and confined him. When Hollywood opened its doors, the scale changed, but the solitude remained. Productions grew larger, crews expanded, smiles multiplied. Yet behind the embraces and congratulations, Alfred felt a new distance. Everything moved faster. Relationships became functional. His talent was admired, but the man was often overlooked. He smiled for the cameras, repeated the same lines in interviews, thanked people with elegance. But inside, something tightened. He began to notice the warning signs. Decisions made without him, vague promises, roles that vanished without explanation. Success illuminated, but it also exposed. And under that harsh light, trust became fragile. Still, Alfred Molina kept moving forward. He built an irreproachable reputation, almost austere. No scandals, no public complaints. He chose silence as armor. Every professional victory was real, but it came with heightened vigilance. He learned never again to confuse recognition with loyalty. Without knowing it yet, this ascent was preparing more than a summit. It was preparing an intimate fall. Because the higher one rises, the more absences are felt. And the greater the expectations, the deeper the mark betrayal leaves when it finally arrives. There was no scandal, no shouting, only a succession of silences settling in. The first shock arrived unexpectedly. A promised project vanished. A decision was made elsewhere, without appeal or explanation. Alfred Molina understood then that loyalty in this world often has an expiration date. That day, something quietly broke. He did not protest. He did not demand answers. He observed. Messages went unanswered. Calls grew rare. A door closed, gently but permanently. He realized that some relationships exist only as long as they remain useful. Other ruptures followed, less visible but more painful. A colleague who withdrew at a critical moment, a friend who chose silence over truth. Each time the same sensation, being replaced without being dismissed, forgotten without being confronted. Little by little, Alfred stopped expecting. He continued to work with the same rigor, but his gaze changed. He learned to distinguish professional respect from genuine attachment. Trust became an exception, never a reflex. Since then, he has kept the names sealed inside his memory. They are not spoken, they are not exposed. They exist in an inner space, dark, calm, and definitive. 5 faces, 5 stories, and one certainty. Some wounds do not seek forgiveness. They seek recognition. 5 names, 5 faces, 5 wounds time never truly healed. Alfred Molina never assembled this list out of anger. It imposed itself slowly over the years like a silent certainty. Each face corresponds to a precise moment when trust collapsed, leaving behind a mark deeper than any professional failure. The first is the face of betrayed closeness, a working companion, almost a brother in arms, with whom he shared doubts, hopes, and long hours of waiting before auditions. When opportunity finally arrived, it favored only one of them. Promises of solidarity dissolved in ambition. What wounded Alfred was not the other's success, but his silence, the absence of a glance, a word, a gesture of acknowledgement. That day, he understood that some friendships do not survive the light. The second face belongs to authority. A decision maker, a man of power, who had promised support and protection. Alfred believed him, perhaps too much. When balances shifted, that support evaporated. He was politely sidelined, replaced without explanation. The wound was cold, administrative. It taught him a brutal lesson. Respect is never guaranteed, even when one has given everything. The third is the most painful. It touches the intimate. A relationship in which he had lowered his guard, dismantled defenses patiently built since childhood. He offered his trust, rare and precious. The betrayal was not dramatic but profound. A hidden truth revealed too late. After that, Alfred Molina took a long time to rebuild himself. This wound did not concern his career, but his heart, and it permanently altered his way of loving. The fourth face is not a single person, but a collective, an industry, a system, at times even the public. It represents those moments when one is applauded one day, then judged, caricatured, or forgotten the next. Alfred understood that public image has no emotional memory. It consumes, then moves on. That collective detachment forced him to protect himself further, to detach from that shifting gaze. And then comes the fifth face, the quietest one, the hardest to look at. It is neither a friend nor a colleague, nor an institution. It is himself. He reproaches himself for having accepted the unacceptable for too long, for choosing silence out of dignity, fear, sometimes sheer exhaustion, for not leaving sooner, for not saying no when it mattered. This inner betrayal weighs the most because it cannot be blamed on anyone else. Today, Alfred Molina does not seek to erase these 5 faces. They are part of him. They shaped his gaze, sharpened his lucidity, hardened his tenderness. Forgive, perhaps. Forget, never. Because some wounds do not ask for peace, they ask to be acknowledged. At the end of the day, Alfred Molina always returns to silence, a different silence from the one he knew when he was younger. Less anxious, more lucid. The 5 faces no longer haunt him as they once did. They no longer knock on the doors of his nights. They remain still, like markers engraved in memory. He now knows that forgiveness is not a spectacular gesture. It is neither a declaration nor a public reconciliation. Sometimes it is simply accepting to carry a story without allowing it to govern the present, continuing to work, continuing to love, but with greater discernment, continuing to move forward without denying what once hurt. Alfred Molina never tried to erase his wounds. He transformed them into restraint, depth, precision. Perhaps that is what gives his characters their particular gravity, that inhabited gaze the camera cannot ignore. Because some betrayals never truly close. They are learned. Can one live fully without forgiving? Or must one sometimes keep the pain in order never to forget who they have become?